allows us to use language and to form symbols and create art was probably enhanced and amplified by these psychoactive plants. And I totally endorse that view. I think there's a lot of sound reasoning in that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I mean, if we, I don't know if it's too soon, but if we forward that, up to our age, so to speak, or the last 2,000 years, I mean, if these things have helped to spawn religion, what does that mean? Does that mean that it's that this is a negative connotation, or is this a perverted way that has happened here? That those who are in control of religion today have not really kind of absorbed the true message of this, but they've perverted it. What do you think, John?
Well, I think that if we're going to talk about the Wasson thesis and consider it as a valid thesis, a valid theory regarding the origin of religion, then we also have to ask, well, how can religion be so wrong?
Right.
That is a question that really comes up and cannot be avoided. And I would just point out quite simply that, again, the difference between religious experience as a direct visionary contact with the divine. You see, under the influence of these psychoactive plants who actually talk to you and speak to you, as you know, many people who've taken them will say that. The plant species actually enters your nervous system and uses your own brain to speak to you, to teach you things, to point out things. This is not some fantastic story I'm making up. It's very widely attested by indigenous peoples who use these plants. And even in the lore of European folklore, this is often attested. Sometimes in these woodcuts and these drawings you see from medieval herbals, which were widespread in Europe, you will see that plants are represented as people. A certain plant or a tree will be represented as a person because the plant spirit, the intelligence of that species spoke to people at the time. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about a primal revelation to the human species from the plant species. Don't forget that the plants are the most numerous inhabitants of this earth, not us.
Right.
This planet is a plant planet. And there are more plant species and more plant entities on this planet than any other kind of species. And so the original experience that Wasson pointed to can be called an interspecies communication. Certain plants have a psychoactive chemistry that allows them to open our minds and speak to us. Now, all of that existed before religion, and all of it also exists today completely apart from religion.
Yeah.
What happened when religion, that is to say, dogma, priests, and the organization of religion began was actually the repression and the forbidding of these plants.
Well, that's very interesting, and that's a good point, I think, because to me it feels like it has been kind of a restriction from the people at the top, the priest, archie, call them whatever you want, that they have been kind of put in a position where they solely have the access to these kinds of enlightening, substances, if you will, and the rest of the people has kind of been left, outside that circle, if you will.
Well, I don't know if they have the access to it. That's a good thing to debate about, and that's connected with the thesis of Carl Ruck, which I mentioned earlier. But one thing is certain. Just look at the story of Genesis in the Bible. Just look at the forbidden fruit.
Yeah.
Gordon Wasson was very clear, and so were the other scholars who worked with him. Many high-level scholars and botanists were very clear on this point. The story of the forbidding of the fruit in the Garden of Eden is the story of how the early priesthoods forbade human beings in the tribe, in the community, to have this direct communication with the divine. It was the beginning of mind control. It was the beginning of everything that we see in our world today that prevents us as individuals from experiencing ecstasy and illumination firsthand. And so the control and suppression of these sacred plants is essential to the organized religions, absolutely essential. There is no organized religion, whether it be Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, which could continue to exist if the use of these psychoactive plants were widely permitted and done in an intelligent manner. So we're really looking at a battle here that has been going on for over 2,000 years, and in some respects we are reaching the final phase of this battle right now as we speak, as we have this interview.
Yeah, continue.
You
Sorry,
probably
John.
know about what happened in Holland this week.
No, enlighten me about that. What's happening?
Well, Holland has long been a place, of liberal attitudes,
right?
Not only concerning prostitution, but also concerning the sale and smoking of marijuana and hashish and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone who goes to Amsterdam or other places in Holland has seen the smart shops.
Yep.
Where you could buy, until 2 years ago, you could buy dried psychoactive mushrooms of various species, such as Psilocybe mexicana, Stropharia cubensis, and so forth. Then, about 2 years ago, legislation was brought in to make the dried packets, the dried mushrooms, illegal, and they were classed, get this, they were classed at the same level as cocaine. So the possession of dried mushrooms is a Class A offense legally now in the European Union, and they're not sold anymore in Holland.
Really?
This was done, by the way, regardless of the fact that there is absolutely no scientific or medical evidence whatsoever that psychoactive mushrooms have any of the devastating effects of cocaine, nor are they addictive. Well, that happened about 2 years ago, and then I was saying to my friends, I'm afraid there's worse coming still. And the worst has now happened. It was possible to buy fresh mushrooms, to buy them in packages just like you would buy mushrooms in a grocery store.
Right.
Fresh psychoactive mushrooms in most of the smart shops in Holland. Just this month, they are putting a legislation into effect that makes it illegal to sell fresh mushrooms anymore in Holland.
So you can't even, because I know that many people have, for instance, they grow their own mushrooms, right? They buy these small little packages with the spores in them.
That's the next thing that's going to go, Henrik.
It is?
That's the next thing. Right now, they've taken 2 steps, and I fully believe that they will eventually take the 3rd step, which will be that they will not only forbid the sale of what are called growth kits.
Yeah.
Growth kits can still be sold in Holland, and they can be ordered in various European countries by the mail. I believe that they're going to outlaw the sale of growth kits, and they're going to make it illegal for anyone to grow their own mushrooms.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, I'm not surprised. This goes along, in the same line, under the same umbrella of everything else that is going on today. We could, for example, mention Codex Alimentarius and even the C51 legislation that is on in Canada right now. And basically, this is about big pharma criminalizing everything that has to do with natural, health products, even up to, garlic and bottled water. In fact, I mean, that's right. It's insane.
Right. It's terribly frightening, this business about the Codex Alimentarius.
Yeah.
And I see that you had an interview regarding the esoteric agenda on your site.
Right, yeah.
I haven't had a chance to look at that yet, but I've been saying to my friends, and I've been putting out the message on my site, that there is absolutely no difference between the great program of Codex Alimentarius, that is to control the food supply of the world, and the control of these psychoactive substances. Both of those programs are coming from the same source.
Yeah.
And we are very, very close to an extremely dangerous situation. I think that Esoteric Agenda is a terribly frightening film.
Yeah.
It scared me, I can tell you that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a wake-up call. That's what the point of it is, in a way. I mean, people gotta realize this, that as you say, I mean, you mentioned it yourself, John, that this is a battle in a way, and unfortunately, as things are right now, we're not winning that battle, so to speak, because we're not even aware of what's going on,
Well, we're becoming aware of what's going on very, very rapidly through the internet and through specifically the kind of work that you do at Red Eyes Creations, the kind of really serious detective work. of exposing this madness that's taking place.
Yeah.
But I think that people will need to look very carefully at how they're going to survive in the future. And what I would propose is that, to do everything that we can to make people aware that this war, there is a war against humanity taking place, and it's taking place on two fronts. One is a war against nutrition, against our ability to feed ourselves. And of course, that's enough to alarm any ordinary person.
Indeed.
But the second is, let's not forget that at the same time, there is a spiritual dimension, because there is a war against the freedom of your mind.
Yeah.
Because it's the psychoactive plants, the plant teachers, which are called the sacred medicine plants, that give us freedom of our minds and put us directly in contact with the divinity of nature and the voice of nature. It's these plants, while you can say potatoes and apples and zucchini and garlic keep us alive and keep us healthy, you could say that the sacred medicine plants keep us sane. They keep us sane, and they maintain our relationship to Gaia and to direct contact from the divine. There is no human being on this planet who needs another person to stand between them and the divinity or the Godhead.
Right.
In fact, it should be absolutely forbidden. If this were a sane planet that was run by compassion and run by intelligent people, it would be forbidden for any person to put themselves between another person and God.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so by taking away, it's frightening what is happening to the food situation. After I saw Esoteric Agenda, I said to myself, well, even if you can't swallow the notion that these great pharmacological programs are orchestrated to create famine and poison the world, that is in fact what they're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether it's an orchestrated agenda or not, that is in fact what they're going to do. So it's terribly frightening, and we must somehow, I think, not let a day go by when we don't think about these problems and try to understand the individual responsibility in facing this here. We're really coming down to the showdown here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we also have to point out, of course, that it's only also when we put ourselves in the hands of these, multinational pharmaceutical corporations that we're are becoming slaves, so to speak, to them. Because still there's nothing at this point, at least, and that might change tomorrow, but today at least there's nothing they can do to ban nature, as they can't go out and prevent, for instance, psilocybin mushrooms to grow in the forest. This is still accessible if you go out into nature itself. So it's still there, and how much they even decide to ban it on their level, we still can attain it. The same thing goes for food, of course. We can still be in a position, if we own a little piece of land, where we still can grow some of these things, and albeit that they might make this illegal and so forth, but that's civil disobedience right there, where you actually do the things that you believe to be right, and if push comes to shove, you might be arrested because of that or whatever. But this is an important thing to kind of put your foot down in the ground, so to speak, and say, this is where I draw the line. I don't care what kind of laws they set up, because I morally think that I'm in the right to do this, and that's what I'm going to do. That's how I feel about it anyway.
Well, I agree with you, and I think more and more people who are made aware of the situation by interviews like we're doing here, and of course many, many other sources on the internet, are feeling the same way. This is where we have to draw the line. We have to draw the line with food and with the sacred plants, both. They both go together. I think it's a very important point that I'm trying to make. On Metahistory.org, I have a new section now called Psychonauts, and there's a button on the menu bar that says Psychonauts up at the top. And there I'm discussing the Wasson thesis, and I'm discussing the generations, the 3 generations of people who have been experimenting with these, not only LSD and